So we get to the public library, and before the presentation I was talking to somebody and there was a question, well, why do we need it? I'll show you why we need it. It's not just because it will be a great thing to do to allow expansion of office space for the municipal function, but there is in fact a very strong case based on a formula, a well-established formula. The question though we've got to ask, I have an iPad, my wife will tell you I take it to bed with me. The iPad follows me around. I take it in the car, I watch the GPS. The question we've got to ask, what happens to libraries with things like the iBook? Well, so far, all the evidence is they are in more demand now than ever they were. And if you look at, say, any development that is new, and I'll show you a picture of it in a minute, like the Douglas Library in Burnam, they increased demand 340% on opening. 340%. The library in Seattle, which is award-winning, can't keep people out. It's seen as an architectural element to visit as well as a library to seek services from. The Toronto libraries are showing growth in all of their branches. There's not a single reported decline anywhere in the light of electronics. So one has to conclude that libraries will continue to exist, but they won't be like what they used to be. They won't be the place where you're told to keep your mouth shut and keep quiet. There will be community places. There will be places where you come together and discuss what you have found because of the internet and because of the iBook and because of the old-fashioned books that are still on the shelves. So, if you look at libraries, this is the one component in all of these that I'm showing you that can be guaranteed a good public support no matter where you are. But here we are. This library over there serves over half of the population of the Sunshine Coast. And if you project the growth of the coast to 2036, you can see that by then there'll be close to 20,000 people being served by this particular library, compared to about 15,000 now. That is quite a growth, and it has quite an impact on space. Now, British Columbia doesn't have a space formula. Alberta has one, Ontario has one. Planners who've been doing planning for libraries in British Columbia have been tending to lean on the Alberta formula, and in fact the proposal for a new library in Port Moody used that formula entitlement, as did the North Vancouver City Library, which has been built for a 25-year population. 25 years! They've built something now for 25 years. So why should there be a space formula? And I wish there was for almost everything, because it's hard to argue against it. It provides equity. No matter where you are, you know the library is the right size for the community. It provides equity in funding too, because then the formula kicks into how much money you can deliver into your community. Universities and schools have them. At UBC, we used a formula that came out of the University of Illinois, which eventually was adapted by Ontario, and eventually we took it over in British Columbia. So people use these methods to try and ensure that there is a guarantee that the proposal you're making is defensible. And you don't have to hire an architect to do fancy planning for you. You can use the formula. And that's what we've done in this particular proposal. It requires, however, that you have to know what you've got. And it took a while to figure out what actually does exist in our library. So I looked at the drawings, and indeed we developed this sort of net assignable area. Architects like to talk about net assignable areas. We're sitting in one right now. If this had a corridor, that would be what we call the gross area. It's the space you need to get into the net assignable area. We won't go into details on that, but this is what you require if you're deciding to go with the formula. When the library opened, Seashell's population was just a bit over 7,000. We've talked about the high demand because of retirement here. We serve now 15,000 people, twice those who were in the District of Sechelt when the library opened. So if you look at the demand, it is clearly here. And if you look at the shortfall of space, which is on the right of this spreadsheet, eventually there's going to be a shortage of about 5,000 square feet. And once again, we did the same formula. To show you how we do it in detail, I put all the cost scenarios on. It depends which one you go for and at what time. But you're looking at maybe 7 million to 9.5 million, including fees, including contingencies, including equipment and furnishings, including a variety of other things, but not the cost of parking, nor the cost of the site. Of course, we don't have a site yet. If we looked at the library too in the future by way of staffing, it will obviously have to increase, and we're looking at, indeed at an increase in staffing as the population grows. Let's not dwell too long on that, that's not my forte. The library in Burnaby is well worth visiting. It's quite a modest library. This picture is theirs, and I rather liked it because A, it showed the library, which is a LEED building, which means it's very conscious of its energy. But you've got the reflections of both the old and the new in the photograph. Inside, the demand when I went there was excessive, but they wouldn't let me photograph it because of people possibly objecting. So they took a photograph for me with one of their staff members pretending to be there. The site determines size, as so often it does in an urban setting. That I don't think is a constraint here in Seashell. It's got open planning. It has enclosures when you need them. In fact, there was a class on somebody's philosophy, I forget where or whose, whilst I was there. I think this is quite an amusing ad. This is for Union steamships. This is on the cover of the report. I think it's kind of whimsical. There's sort of hints of the time and silk stockings and flappers, and there's even the church in the background there, and in comes the Union steamship. Quite a delightful moment. The proposal here, though, I think is absolutely brilliant. It's the concept that there should be a museum for every community on the Sunshine Coast, but here in Seashell there should be a repository for all environmentally sensitive archive material and the support space to manage and maintain it. The Society is here because we're here. It's preserving our history. It's offering exhibitions that stimulate our memory of what we were and how we might be. It inspires curiosity. It inspires a community to share their story. And there's somebody here, Dorothy, I can't see where you are, who is behind the book of Women of Pender Harbour, which if you haven't got it, get it. It's a fantastic book. So we have here a society that's trying to tell us about where we came from, to give us our roots, to show us who we are. The planning study sets the scene for a community museum and archives that many others will wish they had. Not only will it act as the presentation place for museum and archival material of the District of Sechelt, it will be a repository for community archival material for all museums on the Sunshine Coast, in the Sunshine Coast Regional District. The concept is superb. It's all about sharing. It's all about trying to deal with the various communities that exist in our society, yet bringing them together at certain points in time. If you were to talk to the regional district, their preference would always be for centrality. Everything should be central. But clearly, in this case, there's a very good case for fragmentation, and yet somehow managing the whole. So here are our museums, quite remarkable in their variety, and there's one emerging in Pender Harbour, which is confirming, if you like, this notion of components of a string of pearls. But this to me is a collegial approach. I mean, watching how you manage a university at UBC, you're dealing with a pretty wild bunch of human beings in that setting who are very tender and easily embarrassed by whatever you may say. And trying to bring them all together in a very easy way is no mean skill. And that is clearly what this is all about. It's trying to find where we all meet. Here are some of the exhibits. I spent an afternoon with Ann Watson, and I said to Ann, well, what have we got? And this is her list: Union steamships, Helen Dore, gravel pits. I don't know who Patrick O'Kelly is, but I'd sure like to meet him. Gilmore Brothers, who built boats. HMCS Chaudière, very interesting, in our inlet. It's the Seashell inlet history. Festivals and societies, resorts and holidaymakers, sporting people and events, the hatchery, educational programs over the years. And I think there has to be a case for changing small exhibits that keep our minds alive within the whole. So we're proposing 3 options. The ideal is the one that does everything. And I mean everything. It would be the sort of thing people would come to see from everywhere else in Canada saying, my golly, is that really how it should be done? Scheme 2 is a kind of, well, we can't do it all, so we'll do some of it. And Scheme 3 is really, well, we won't build a museum, we'll just build the archival component to service everybody else. So here, those are the 3 options, and the options range from 2.4 to 11 million. What would be in here? Many of the things you have seen already in the performance hall. A foyer, a gift shop, meetings rooms, classrooms, workspace, exhibition display areas. If you start looking at this, the compatibility of this kind of activity with the hall is really excellent. If we look at the space that would not be seen as public, but I call domestic in my planning jargon, we would expect to see the District of Sechelt community archivists in this development, but the District of Sechelt records coordinator would probably stay in the municipal hall. So we're looking at all the things you'd expect to see. A cold store, because when you bring in artifacts that you don't know about, you have to make sure they're all right before you take them anywhere else. There's also got to be a place, and I call it an entrepot. And I was saying when I presented this to the Committee of the Whole, there was a time I could tell you I'd been in every jail in British Columbia. And entrepots are very important to jails because you go in one door and they lock you in, then they open up another door to let you into the jail. And that's what you would have to have here in order to bring the artifact in, check it out, make sure it's in limbo legally before it was accepted by the museum. We're looking at workshops which will be able to repair and mend sometimes quite large things like boats. And I think what we're seeing here is storage for things like an outreach program, the sort of things that is so essential for schools and so essential for the community as a whole. And of course the shipping and warehousing and the loading dock. So we're back to what we've seen before. And here again we go through the same formula of trying to calculate space with all the no parking, no site in the calculation. And last but not least, and this is a critical report for 2 reasons. It introduces you to the most modest of the components, but at the same time moves into the concept of a cultural centre or a cultural complex. We're looking at an art gallery, which in its sense is a very simple space, elegant, allowing the art. There will be a gift shop. Have you heard that before? There'll be a gallery and display. Have we heard this before? Studio workshop space, chair storage, very important, table storage. There's a good chance that the museum would need chair storage and table storage, but they could use this one. A secure vault, a bit like the museum, you need somewhere to put your stuff to make sure it's safe. And last but not least, the loading dock. Now these are the thoughts about the art gallery, and some of them you've already heard, about our society and how many of us have chosen to come here from away. It's about how many of us came here with some, for want of a better argument, post-secondary experience or experience that is beyond our normal school years. We are interested in things beyond, if you like, what you'd expect to find in an original resource community. And that's what's happening to us here. We're moving from a resource-based community to a community interested in arts and culture and retirement. We're looking at volunteers. We're looking at a proportion of people artists particularly, who are a higher proportion here than in many other communities in British Columbia and Canada.